In this tutorial for the Master Fader app made by Mackie, we're going to discuss shows and snapshots and how those are stored. Let's click on the Shows button right up here in the upper right-hand corner. We have two tabs, Current Show, that's the one that's loaded, and the other shows that are available that we could load. These are all different bands, different groups I do sound for. You could use this, of course, however you want, but I'm just going to describe how I use it. Let's go to the current show. It looks like we have 17 snapshots. I would have preferred them to be called scenes because these are different times in this show. And what I use these for, this is one band that I do sound for, and these are a bunch of different jobs that I've done. So at the end of a job, what I do is, for instance, the last one that I did was at the Ritz. The next job is going to be at Al's restaurant. The show contains snapshots. The show stores your snapshots. Let me also mention that all of this information for keeping track of all your settings and everything, none of that is actually stored in the DL32R mixer. It is all stored in your iPad. If you have 4 other people in the band that have iPads and they use those for their monitor mixes, then a copy of this show is stored in their iPad as well. They're all identical. There is no master, there is no slave or anything like that. They are all identical. I believe up to 20 different devices can be used with Master Fader. Let's create a new snapshot. Store snapshot. Okay, it just created a new one. We've got to name it. We're going to call this Tutorials. All right, that's Tutorials. If we go back up here, just like a computer, we are now running the snapshot called Tutorials. So if we make a whole bunch of changes to this, let's say we mute the 4 drum mics. If we go back to the previous show that we were running a minute ago, watch what happens. Let's go there, recall Al's restaurant. That's not what we just did. And that's correct. Let's go to the tutorials. Watch this. Do you think this is going to have the 4 drums muted? Of course not. Did we save the show after we muted the drums? No, but let's recall it and see what happens. Yes, recall this snapshot. There you go. If we want to make a copy of this or store it with the drums muted, well, then we would have to mute the drums. And then we would have to either create a new snapshot or simply click on the one that we have up and running called Tutorials and hit Replace. Replace this snapshot with the current state? Yes. So let's go to a completely different show. Let's go offline show. And this one should be deleted. Let me delete that one. Let's go to Jack Miller and load Jack Miller's show. This will replace the current show and can take up to 2 seconds per snapshot and 30 seconds per image to transfer. Load the show? Yes. You'll see a little Apple icon gear running there. You'll also see it on the show that is loading. So what it's doing is it's letting us know that that show is closing and being overwritten by this one. Not overwritten, but we're opening up a new show. And it should be ready. There it goes. So this is Jack Miller's job I did for him. We did a sound check, and then I've labeled that one post sound check. So let's look at the first one. Let's hit recall. Okay, We had kick, snare, hat, tom, floor, 2 overheads, bass, 2 guitars, a bunch of guitars, electric, 2 acoustics, a sax, and a bunch of vocals. Okay, that's that job. Now notice this says sound check. This is the snapshot that I created the night before so that when I got there, I wouldn't look like an idiot and stand around for a half hour creating a show and adding all these channels and naming them and color coding them. I did that all ahead of time. And when I got there, I unmuted the channels after we set up and we did a sound check. I never saved that. I never went to replace. I never clicked replace. What I did was I clicked store snapshot and I got a number 2 and then I named it post sound check. So if you click 2, recall, yes, you're going to see the different things that were turned up. Now, you'll also see a lot of drums aren't even turned up yet. When I named it post sound check, that was really incorrect. It was after I had done some pretty critical level setting of vocals and guitars and stuff, which were more important to me than hi-hat and floor tom. So what I did is I wanted to save it. So what I did is I created a new snapshot and called it post sound check. Of course, then later I ran things. Let's go back to a different show, offline shows. Let's go back to Glenn. Let's load the Glenn show. Yeah. And we have to wait because like it says, it's loading a whole bunch of images and a bunch of snapshots. Every one of those snapshots has every bit of information about every EQ, compressor, fader level, mute status, pictures, naming, colors, everything. And so that's why it takes a little bit of time. It's pretty fast, though. It'll be ready here in just a couple of seconds. And then we're going to load our most current version of Glenn. All right. Tutorials. Recall. Notice how this recall this snapshot comes up. Let me show you or describe another cool feature that was added. In the settings, we have confirm snapshot recall. It's turned on. If we turn that off, here's what's going to happen. When I load a different snapshot, like this older one, recall, guess what? Immediately it loaded the snapshot. It did not prompt me with, are you sure you want to load this snapshot, blah, blah, blah. The reason that I wanted Mackie to add that feature, and it's an option. It's your choice as to whether you have that warning or not. Let's go back, turn it on. I'll show it to you again. Confirm snapshot on. Recall. See, it said recall? Yes. And you have to confirm. Do you really want to recall this snapshot? Yes, I really do. Here's a situation where it's nice to not have that confirmation dialog box. If you're doing a theatrical production in a theater, in a show, in a school or a church production or whatever, you're going to have a whole bunch of scenes. You have one show, but you're going to have a bunch of scenes. It's really important to me in that setting to be able to go to the next scene immediately. Just immediate. So Mackie was gracious enough to add that feature. So now when you want to go to the next scene, all you do is hit the scene, bam, and you're there. And all the faders, everything changes exactly the way you want. So here's our other iPad, a second one. And what we could do is we could actually have someone else, not us, we're running the sound. we could actually have someone else loading all these scenes for us. Let's go pretend that we're at the beginning of the show, recall scene 1, and there we go. So what they would do is they would have this iPad sitting over there, and they would handle queuing all these scenes for us. Now we're at the end of scene 1. We're going to go to scene 2, recall. Bam. So there's lots of ways you can use the scenes in a show. It's up to you. Personally, I use the name of one band, and I call that a show. In that show, I keep individual snapshots of each job. Throughout the job, every so often, I go up here, I hit tutorials, I hit the shows button, and I hit replace. Replace. Yes. It doesn't create a new snapshot. It just replaces the old information in that snapshot with all the current settings. So those are snapshots and shows. These are offline shows, the ones that aren't loaded, and this is the currently loaded show. Again, you can put notes in there about the show. Let me explain again that the shows are not stored in the DL32R. They are stored in the iPads. Now, as far as the DL32R not storing the show, I have to back up and say, well, that's kind of a lie. And here's why. If we were to shut everything off right now, the DL32R would shut down with all of these exact settings. Even if we didn't save this to a new snapshot, all these settings are in the DL32R. When we turn the DL32R on next week or next year or tomorrow, and when we turn on one of the iPads, if the iPad has a show on it or a snapshot that is in any way different than what the DL32R remembered from its last job, the DL32R will prompt you and let you know that the iPad is running a different show. This button up here I never talked about, the one all the way in the upper left-hand corner. Upper left-hand corner, you can see the main fader there. These are all your monitor mixes. Big fat one there because it's stereo. That's the bass player, remember? You got your 2 reverbs and delay over here. These are matrix 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We didn't even talk about those. Subgroup 1 and 2. Remember we had those linked together so there'd be a stereo group, even though we're not using them. Then we have the VCAs. Bump that, sorry. We have the VCAs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first one is called all monitors. The second one is VCA 2. Third one, 3, 4, 5. We're not using those. And here's all of our inputs right down here, all the way down to the reverb returns and the delay. Let's say you're hearing something distorting, but you can't tell what it is in the mix. You could go to this screen and look for blasting red signal, and you could say, oh, it's the sax. You could tap on the sax. It will immediately take you to the sax channel. You could then lower the gain and get rid of the distortion. That's how nice that overview window is. And even though you can't adjust fader levels here, the exception to that rule here in this window is here's all your mutes over here. You can actually do that. It's pretty risky doing it because they're so tiny. Even on a iPad 9.7 inch is pretty tiny. But you can use the mutes from there, but it's kind of pointless in my opinion. The center one is always going to take you to your mixer view, which shows multiple channels. And whatever channel you have highlighted here, the last channel I touched was the sax. You can see it's got a little yellowish gold bar outline. If I click on one single channel, it will bring up that channel. Let's have some fun mixing some stuff, just a few channels.